Hello friends and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Kristen and this is my little corner of the internet where I share with you how knitting and other fiber crafts have woven into my life. And if you're a returning viewer, thank you so much for coming back, especially after this little bit of a summer break that I have taken. Today's episode is number 69 of my podcast, where I share with you all the finished objects that I have. I have some finished spins to show you guys today and some works in progress as well. I also have some acquisitions to show at the end because last weekend I was in Seattle for the Flock Fiber Festival and I picked up some beautiful yarn and brought it home, and so I'd like to share that with you guys as well, but I will have all the acquisitions at the end of the episode, so that way if you're not interested in acquisitions, you don't have to watch that part of the video. As always, if you'd like to follow me other places, I am DoSo Knits here on YouTube, Ravelry, and Instagram. And then down in the show notes down below, it's below this video, if you click more twice I think, will be all the show notes. I link to my Ravelry project pages and all the pertinent information of what I talk about is down there. I also use timestamps throughout the video, so that way if you need to jump around to certain projects, all of that's timestamped. And then on my Ravelry project pages as well, I link to the episodes that I talk about certain projects. So if you ever want to go back and see all the videos and segments where I've talked about a certain project, those are also linked on the project pages. So that's kind of all the upfront admin. I did just want to say thank you guys for coming back after this long break that I've taken. I ended up kind of taking a summer break from recording. It's been a little over 2 months since my last podcast episode, and the reason for that was work was just very stressful. I wasn't knitting a lot, especially with the warmer weather, and honestly my anxiety was pretty high, and so I just needed a little bit of a break. This was the thing that kind of had to give, but I've really missed talking to you all, and this is honestly one of the things that kind of grounds me and helps me, feel prepared and helps alleviate a bit of my stress. So I'd like to get back to my every other week schedule of recording and posting for all of you, but thank you for just giving me that little bit of a summer break, and I'm hoping to be back, especially with the weather cooling down and with the flock this previous weekend. I feel like my desire and want to record and be here and chat with all of you has been rejuvenated, and I've missed it. So just want to say thank you. Thank you for being here. The fact that you clicked on this video and are deciding to spend a little bit of time with me is truly amazing. So just thank you. Know that it doesn't go unnoticed. But with that, we'll go ahead and we'll jump into some of the finished objects that I have to show you since I last recorded. So first off, I'll mention what I am wearing. This is my Tolsta Tee that I have knit. It's in a cotton alpaca blend. It's from a yarn from Knit Crate. I'll have the Ravelry project page linked down below, but it's the DK version, short sleeve. This is one of my go-to t-shirts. It's super easy to put on, super comfortable, and it's really hot here in Denver still, so I decided to wear just something pretty comfortable today. But then we'll move into the different finished objects that I have. And sorry if the camera moves just slightly. Ebony has decided the tripod is the perfect scratching post right now, so she's being very aggravating, wanting attention. So over the summer, it has been Summer Sock Camp, which has been hosted by the Crazy Sock Lady, and also Shop Yarnia, which is a yarn store in New Jersey, does their sock bingo. So with both of those things, I've wanted to knit some socks, and with the sock bingo specifically, I've wanted to get a blackout with that board. So I think I'm just going to go ahead and start with all the socks. We'll do the finished object socks and then other socks, just so we can do all the socks in one kind of chunk. So this is my sock bingo board, and all the ones that are currently highlighted are squares that I've marked off for socks that I have currently finished. And so I have 3 pairs of socks done, and then I have 2 current works in progress for socks that I'll end up finishing my board. So I'll show you kind of in order of the socks that I have done. And I'm only gonna put one on a blocker just to like save a little bit of time. So these were my first pair of socks. So these were a pair of shorty socks. The yarn is Leading Men Fiber Arts. And this was a little kind of sock set. It didn't come as a sock set, but I bought it that way, that I got from Leading Men Fiber Arts at the Interweave Yarn Festival. So the main color is called Koi Pond, and then I had a little teal mini to go with it. Both of these were on their Showstopper base, which was a 75-25, I believe. And I have a little bit left over. So I did 2 shorty socks for these. I did a pop of color at the cuff, 10 rounds of 2x2 ribbing, 12 rounds for the leg, a slip stitch heel flap, a square heel turn, and then just the foot to fit my leg. So these socks ended up giving me these squares on the bingo board. So I got shorty socks, variegated or speckled yarn. I did these 2 at a time because I did them concurrently, and so that's 2 at a time for me. So I would do a cuff on one, a cuff on the other, leg on one, leg on the other, back and forth. It also gave me the contrasting heel, fingering weight, cuff down, a heel flap, a vanilla sock, and then beating second sock syndrome for that 2 at a time. So those were my first pair of socks that I finished. My next pair of socks were a pair for Shane. I had him go look at my stash. I had him just pick up yarn that he wanted. And so these were socks number 2. Give you a nice close-up. So these have a folded stockinette brim. So I knit 20 rows and then pick up and knit them together for this folded cuff. Again, 10 rounds for the leg, slip stitch heel flap, square turn, gusset, and then down to the end. I was just feeling, the heel flaps to begin with. Also, I had knit him previously, I think it's in the photo of my last podcast episode, socks that I knit for him with Felici and the same kind of folded cuff, and he really likes that. So I wanted to make another pair for him, and he really wants more shorty socks. So that is what I did. So for these, I didn't get a ton of new squares because it was very similar to that last pair of socks that I just showed, but I did get a 9-inch circular and then the gift knit square because I am gifting these to Shane. So those were the second one that I have finished. The third pair of socks that I have finished were another pair for myself. I ended up starting these because we were going to a movie and I didn't have any like plain stockinette knitting to take with me because I think I was working on Shane's socks. However, they were in like the gusset decreases, so I couldn't do that in the movie. So I ended up casting these on so that I would have them for the movie. And so that is what these look like. And what's really easy when I start socks for a movie sometimes is I started these toe up. And so with that, I can increase and do the toe very quickly, and then my sock is ready for in the round knitting and it's ready to go. So with these, I did them toe up. I cast on 20 stitches total, 10 per needle, increased every other row until I got to 56, which is what I use for myself. I did these with a 9-inch circular on a US 0. I then did a shadow wrap heel up, and then I think I did 15 rounds of leg on these since the short row heel is a little more narrow And then to get another bingo board, I did a 1x1 twisted rib. And so this yarn is a sock set from a homespun house. I do not remember the name because I think I've lost the label. I'll try to find it. But it was one of the Patreon sock sets. Buddy, Sherlock, go lay down, please. Thank you. So as I was saying, these were a homespun house sock set for one of her Patreons. And so for these, the socks or the squares that I marked off on my bingo board were a short row heel, toe up socks, and then a twisted ribbing cuff. So those were socks number 3. And I forgot to mention the yarn used for these socks were Autumn Breeze in the colorway Harvest Hue. So, and I have a lot of this yarn left. I think I have about 50 grams left since I did shorties for Shane. And these all were knit on US zeros. So with that, I still have a good amount of spots left on my bingo board. But then I did a little bit of like figuring out to try to figure out how I could get a blackout for this board. Because with the Yarnia sock bingo, if you get a bingo, which is just 5 in a row, you get a little prize, and then if you get a blackout, they have like an additional prize. And I'm all about a good challenge. And the goal is you just have to knit 5 different socks. So I had a good amount of things to choose from. So I went and I cast on, and I researched a little bit in order to maximize my yarns here. But I then went and I started this pair of socks. And I will say these look a little crazy. But here's what these look like. And so these are a pair of DK weight socks that I am knitting for Shane. I'm doing a 2x2 rib for 10 rows. It might be a little more because I always end with a color change. I then did the leg, and I actually did this as an afterthought heel. Now this heel is very round. And so because one of the bingo squares is a new to me heel, I wanted to try something out because I'm not a huge fan of the afterthought heel that I've tried before. It fits Shane fine, but it doesn't fit me amazing, so I wanted to try something new. And so this is called the thumb joint. Let me look. It's got a really weird name. Okay, so I've pulled this heel from the pattern called Fork in the Road Socks by Laura Neal. It's a free pattern on Ravelry, and essentially it has instructions for the whole sock, but basically it gives you instructions for how to do this heel. It's a heel from her book Sock Architecture, and the heel is called the Thumb Joint Hat Top Heel. Because the way you do this sock, or this heel, is it's an afterthought heel, and then you knit stockinette for the length of the top of the recipient's thumb to the thumb joint. So I measured Shane's thumb to his thumb joint. I basically had him do this so I could measure it pretty easily. And so you knit stockinette, no decreases for that length, and then you do decreases like a hat top. So it's like divided into 6, and then you do your decreases around, which gives it this very round hat-like look. So when I'm holding it up, I think this sock looks quite funny. However, I have had Shane try it on, and the heel looks fine on. It just looks kind of crazy and very round and like, I don't know, kind of obtrusive when it's not being worn. So we'll see. I wanted to try something new, and he's a good guinea pig for that. So the yarns I'm using in this are both leftovers, and one of them is a self-striping. So the one is a leftover, I guess technically I'm using 3. But the first color is Nomadic Yarns You'll Float 2 on the yak sock base. And that's this one. It's 70% superwash merino, 20% yak, and 10% nylon. The second color is this gray sparkly color. This is from Les Garçons. I don't have the label in here for it, but it's their sparkle base. And then for the heel, I'm using Stranded Dye Works in this brown, just because since I am using scraps, I am a little worried about yarn chicken, so I wanted to do the contrasting heel, even though I think using the stripes would have been cool. But I wanted to do the stripes and marl it with the plain color, so I think that adds a really cool effect. So you still see the stripes, but you can get a little more, I don't know, it's less muddy since it's held with one color. And the gray is really similar to like this stripe, so I think it works pretty well. So these socks are getting me a lot of different squares. So it's getting me a new heel for trying this, an afterthought heel. They're DK weight socks, so that's a square. They're Scrappy Socks with self-striping, so that's 2 different squares for using Scrappy and for using self-striping yarn. I'm also using DPNs. This is my first time I've ever used DPNs for socks. These are a US 3 since I'm doing a DK weight sock. I'm doing 48 stitches for Shane. Essentially I'm using K Litton's DK weight sock pattern, but then I subbed out that heel. So first time using DPNs, not a huge fan. It's fine, but I just feel like I'm constantly having to switch needles. I don't necessarily feel like my stitches are gonna fall off, but I just don't like switching that often. I mean, and that's my qualm with Magic Loop as well. I feel like I'm constantly having to switch. So I figured if I was gonna do DPNs, in case I wasn't a huge fan of it, I could do it for this sock. And then if I want to do the second one on 16-inch circulars or Magic Loop instead, I don't need to do the second one for the bingo board. It's just 5 different pairs of socks. So I can do these kind of in the way I'm not preferring. It was good to try out, I think, since I've never done DPNs on socks. But yeah, not my favorite. But I do really love how these are working out. I think the marl stripe is so cool. So that is one of my 2 works in progress to finish my sock bingo board, and then I have one more to show you. And so these socks are the Brave the Season socks, which is a pattern by Huga Canyon. And here's how far I am on these. These are very dark, so I'm hoping they'll show up okay on the screen. So they have this bit of lace texture after the pop of color for the cuff, and then it has this cable pattern that goes down all the way for the leg. You have a slip stitch heel flap, and then the cable continues on the front of the sock. And it's a very easy cable pattern to kind of memorize. So I'm knitting this with a sock set from Les Garçons. I have no idea where any of my yarn tags are. Normally when I'm podcasting I'm a little better, but I don't know where these are. So this is the sock set. The purple is the main color, which is why this is so dark and hard to see on the screen. And then this teal for the contrasting. So the pattern is written and tells you how long to do the contrasting cuff color for. I followed it exactly for the rounds for the cuff, the rounds for the leg, moved into the heel flap. The only thing I've changed is I did a square heel turn because I like that heel turn more than the standard triangle heel turn. But otherwise I've been following this pattern exactly, and this is what's going to get me the rest of my sock bingo board. So this one is getting me magic loop, which honestly, because this one, it's a 1/1 cable on the front, which I just do with I don't do it with a cable needle. I just do it with like the pinch and switch. So I do cables without a cable needle. It's 1/1, but I find that easier to do lace and cables with magic loop than I do with a 9-inch circular. So that is helpful. So this has magic loop, a lace pattern, solid yarn, a new to me pattern, and a cable design. And with all of those, I will finish off my bingo board. So as long as I finish this sock and the DPN Scrappy sock before the end of August, I will be able to submit and finish my socks. And so that has been a fun little challenge. I feel like I've wanted to do a summer of shorty socks, and I feel like I've succeeded in doing that. I had to do the one pair of, I guess I could have done the DPN socks or this DK socks as shorties, but I know Shane would prefer to just have those as tall socks because they're thicker and he doesn't necessarily need thick short socks. So that's basically my sock parade, some of what I've been up to and what I've currently been working on. And so those are my socks. I've kind of gotten back into the groove of them. The vanilla ones have been very handy for like work meetings or on the go knitting. But then with both the DPN sock now and the magic loop sock, I kind of didn't have a plain stockinette in the round object, which leads to one of my works in progress right now. But before we move into that, I do have one more finished object that I'd like to show you before we go into works in progress. So I have one more finished object, and this is a flax sweater that I have knit for my nephew. So this yarn is yarn that I found at Goodwill. It was Lion brand antimicrobial yarn. There were 2 skeins of this worsted weight yarn they were both marked at $1.99. But then when I went up to the cashier, she was like, I'm just going to give you both of these balls of yarn for $1.99 total. So this little sweater cost me $2. So I used the flax pattern by Tin Can Knits. I did the worsted weight version. And for this, I just used the Tin Can Knits app, which was really helpful because you can just plug in the size that you want to make and the yarn weight you want to use. So I made the 1 to 2 year old size, cast on, did the 1x1 ribbing. I followed this basically exactly to the pattern, but I did omit the garter panel on the sleeves. But overall, I followed it to the lengths in the pattern, the arm lengths in the pattern, bound off. This took like a skein and a half of yarn, a few weeks of knitting just because I would pick it up and put it down. I wasn't like working on it all the time, but it worked up pretty quickly. It's 100% acrylic, but it'll be machine washable, which I know my nephew's mom and dad will appreciate. And since I rescued the yarn from Goodwill, I felt like it was a good thing to practice with. I like the slightly heathered look of the yarn. But yeah, it's really cute. There's not a ton to say about it. It was something that I was kind of in a rut. I didn't know what to make. And I had this yarn and I didn't necessarily need to swatch because if I make it a little too small or a little too big, it'll still fit him just fine. I mean, I already sized up. He's only going to be 1 in November. So the 1 to 2 year old size should get him through this winter, I think. If anything, it'll be a little oversized and they can roll the sleeves up. But this was just a nice little knit. I think it's so cute. And the little baby knits are so fast. I will say the only thing that I kind of struggled with on this is when I first started the sleeve, I tried using my smaller ChiaoGoo set because it was knit on a US 6, this sweater. And so I tried using those tiny circulars to knit the sleeve, but the sleeve circumference is just slightly too small to do that comfortably. So I ended up switching that to Magic Loop, and then the sleeves went by a lot quicker. So that's just a little reminder, if something is feeling difficult or hard, maybe try changing the tools you're using, because that could help make the process a little bit easier. But look at the little cuff. It's so cute. And for the cuff bind off and the bottom hem, I just did a sewn bind off, which is where you go through 2 stitches on your needle purlwise, pull the yarn through, and then you go off that first stitch, you go in through it knitwise, and you pull that 1 stitch off the needle. So go through 2 purlwise, go through 1 knitwise, and pull it off. And I think that makes a nice edge and is still pretty stretchy as long as you don't pull too hard. And yeah, I've already blocked this and it's ready to go. So now that I've podcast, I can get this in a package to his mom. So I'm very happy with this. I think it's so cute. It's so small. I can see why people like knitting things for tiny humans, because they go very quickly. And yeah, if you've never knit a sweater before, a kid's sweater is a great place to like practice all those skills on a smaller scale. And I think fit is less of an issue because kids are constantly growing. So you just kind of size up. But that's my last finished object that I have to share since I last podcast. I guess that's technically not true. I do have 2 other things. I have some finished spinning. I don't have labels on these yet, but I will link the finished yarn page down below. But if anything, I'll just show you this yarn that I have finished spinning over the last few months. So this is the first one. This is a 3-ply that I finished. It's using Into the World fiber. The colorway was called Auto Magically. It was a 3-ply. I split it fractally. I initially plied it and my plies were too loose, so then I had to reply it. Basically I just plied it more going through the second time, and now I have this really nice twist going through these. I have done like the yardage and the weights. I just haven't made the finished tag yet that I put on these, but this is about a sport DK weight skein of yarn. And I'm pretty happy with it. I really love how these colors came out. I think it's really cool to see, like, I thought it was more black, but it's kind of blue. And then the pops of the peach and the green are very cool. So that's one skein of yarn that I finished. I'm very happy with this. And then I have finished another skein of yarn. This one is also a 3-ply, leaning more toward a DK. It's very autumnal and fall. This was fiber that I picked up from Interweave Yarn Fest. It is from Greenwood Fiber Arts, the colorway Cadet. I'm really using my brain memory here, and I'm pretty sure it was Falkland. It has a good amount of drape, as you can see it kind of bending over. I might have slightly over twisted this in the end because I really had to I washed it, spun it out to dry, and then when I was drying it, I really had to like put a weight at the bottom for when it was stretching and drying out, because there were some like kinks. still. Now that it's in the skein, I think it's relaxed a little bit, but it's very plump and round. And I think the colors are really pretty. It's a really beautiful skein. Whatever fiber this was, I don't remember, I think it was Falkland. Not my favorite. Not my favorite to spin. But if you want more details about my spinning, I will have the spinning project page below too, because I just kind of track everything in Ravelry. So I did finish this skein as well. I had a third skein that I did finish plying. I spun 2 singles, went to ply it, and like nothing I was doing was making the skein like come together. And I was really confused. I tried like adding more twist and that didn't work. I tried taking twist out and that didn't work. I tried applying twist in the opposite direction and that like worked but didn't work, and I was like, what is going on? And then I finally at one point, upon closer investigation, looked at the individual plies, and one ply I had done clockwise and the other I had done counterclockwise, and I'd already plied the entire skein together and they just weren't wrapping together. Here, I'll show you. Hold on. This is what this mess looks like. Like no matter what I was doing, one would twist more, as you can kind of see, and the other one would like lose twist. And so this is kind of what it looks like. It's like very loosely plied together, and I didn't realize what the problem was until I like plied this all together and then put it to take a bath, and I was like, why is this so kinky? And then I figured it out. So you can see it's just like, so I think like the only way to salvage this would be to take the individual plies apart and like do a chain ply of each ply together, and nothing about that sounds like something I want to do. So it's a bit of a bummer because I really liked this color. I was very excited to use this. Not in anything specific, and at least it was only 4 ounces. But I was a little bummed, and I'm still a little annoyed. So that's what it looks like. I think the colors are pretty, but it just didn't work. I think what happened is because I spun this completely with my e-spinner, because I'm still recovering from my ankle surgery, and when I started this spin, treadling was still a little difficult with my traditional spinning wheel, which is over here. So I used my e-spinner, which has a switch to switch whether you're spinning clockwise or counterclockwise. And so I think I had done the first bobbin correctly. And then we went up for a weekend vacation, and I packed up my e-spinner and I took it with me. And I think somewhere in that process of packing it up or unpacking it, plugging it in, that switch got flicked to the other direction, and that is why one of my bobbins got plied in the wrong direction. So I'm still a little annoyed. If you know of a way that this could potentially be salvaged, I'd like to hear. I know I could use it for weaving, and people have mentioned that. I don't know how that would work. Do the plies not matter in that? I don't know. But for right now, it's probably just going to go sit on that shelf with all the yarns of previous caked but no longer being worked on. So there it is. You can all see it. So, like I said, that would have been a third finished spin. But alas, the spinning beings decided it was not going to be. And I learned a very important lesson, and that is to double check which direction your e-spinner is spinning. Anyway, let's move on to a more positive note, and I'll show you all the different works in progress that I've currently been working on. And so, as I mentioned when I was talking about my sock bingo, because my current 2 sock projects are kind of in that weird, they're not stuck in the round. They're not necessarily in a weird stage. They're just not great for meetings because DPNs are difficult to use for meetings, and a cable pattern is also not great for meetings. And with that, we were going to go see the new Marvel movie of Deadpool versus Wolverine, and I didn't have any knitting. And so this is a project that I've been thinking of making for a while, and then that morning before we went to the movie, I was like, I think I'll be able to cast this on, and I know I'll have plenty of knitting. And I did not do a swatch. So I started a Oslo Hat, which is a pattern by Petite Knit. It's a DK weight hat pattern, and it is essentially all knitting until you get to the crown. So I cast it on, and this is where I'm at. It is also a dark yarn. So this is Rowan Felted Tweed. As you can see, it's this black color, and it has these blue, orange, white flecks because it is a tweed yarn. This is what the label looks like. It's 50 grams. So DK weight, 50% wool, 25% alpaca, and then 25% viscose. The color is 211. And so I cast this on because with the Oslo Hat, you just cast on and you knit basically until you're ready to do your folded brim, and then you'll connect the folded brim around. So I think I might be at the point where I need to secure my beginning of round to my current knitting to get my folded brim. I need to do a quick measure. But this has been great. I have been working on this during meetings. I work on it when we go to dinner. It's great because it's just stocking it around and around. During the Deadpool movie, I think I got a couple inches done, and this will be for a gift for Christmas for someone that doesn't like a lot of color in their life. So I'm introducing them to a bit of color with the flecks of tweed. So this is currently in my Jezebel bee bag. It's a tiny one, and I'm currently still on the first skein. Each of these skeins is 50 grams. So I have 100 grams total. I don't know if you can do an Oslo hat with 100 grams. I may have to go pick up another one of these skeins. I got this from a local yarn store, so I think I'd be able to go pick up another skein pretty easily. But let me know in the comments if you've done an Oslo hat with DK weight yarn and how much yarn you needed. I've only done one before, and I used fingering weight held double to get a DK. So I'm not 100% sure. I'd like to know. The one qualm I have sometimes with the Petite Knit patterns is she kind of lists, like, her yarn is 50 grams, and then each of the 50 grams equals this many yards, and so you would need 3 balls, and so then you have to do the math to figure out the yardage for each size. I much prefer when patterns list how much yardage you need per size instead of me having to do the math. But I think I'm doing the adult medium because I've heard the adult large is quite large, and the recipient that I'm making this for doesn't like loose hats and would prefer it being snug. So I'm doing the adult medium, and I think that size calls for 150 grams, so I may have to get another skein. But if you've done it out of 100, I'd love to hear. So that's this hat. It's kind of my easy stockinette project right now, after I finish recording this today, I have a thing that I have to go to tonight, which will just involve me kind of sitting in an audience and listening to someone chat. So I'd like to, if I'm at the folded brim, I'd like to do that so that this is ready to go for this evening. And I will say one additional thing that I did with this is when I cast on more than 100 stitches, I always put stitch markers every 20 stitches of my cast on so that it's easier to count, because then you only have to count to 20, and then as I'm counting my stitch markers, I can go 20, 40, 60, 80, 100. So what I did is I kept the stitch markers in the cast on edge. And what I'm planning to do when I start this kind of the joining of the cast on to this folded edge, because you knit the cast on together with your current stitches, what I'm going to do is I'm going to place the stitch markers also every 20 apart, so then that way it can kind of keep me on track. That way if I get to, that way I make sure it doesn't get too twisted, because that's my biggest problem with like picking up and knitting the cast on. Also, since this is black yarn, it's going to be a little harder to read, so I just want that extra bit of assurance and guideline of like, okay, I hit the marker on the stitches on my needle and I've hit the marker at the bottom, or if I need to, you know, skip one on the bottom so that the markers are lining up, I'll be able to do that pretty easily. But that's this pattern. I'm using US 4s, 16-inch circular, just a fixed circular for these, and I think I'm making pretty good progress. This yarn is very delightful to work with. I don't know, it's just got a nice feel to it. It doesn't split. It is working up really nicely at this gauge. So this has honestly been a pleasure to knit, and I think this recipient will really like it. So this next work in progress has been on my needles for quite a long time. I just checked the Ravelry project page and I started it June 2nd. I don't think I showed this on the last episode. I might have started it right after. But this is the Seagrass Tank by Samantha Guerin. I signed up to test knit this pattern and did not complete the test knit because work was so crazy and just a lot of things happened, both with my brain and with this project. However, I really need to get back to it before the weather cools down. So this is a DK weight tank top pattern. Here it is. I am knitting this out of a cotton linen yarn. You cast on, I believe you start with the back. You knit down to the bottom of your armhole, pick up one of your fronts, knit down the neckline, pick up the other front, knit down the neckline, join together, knit down to finish the underarm, join underneath, and then it's just knitting around and around. So the yarn I am using is BC Garn Alino. It is a 50% linen, 50% cotton. Technically, Ravelry rates this as a DK. However, the ball band says to use a US 2 or to US 4, which is a 3 to 3.5 millimeter. And it says roughly 22 stitches and 30 rows in a swatch. And it definitely looks like more of a fingering weight. So I'm saying this is more of a fingering weight. Sorry. This pattern is a fingering weight. My yarn on Ravelry says it's DK, but this is a fingering weight sweater. So I used a US 3 when knitting flat, and then a US 4 when knitting in the round, because I purl looser than I knit. So when I'm knitting flat, I go down a size if there's any patterns that switch. So I've finished a few inches past the underarm, it has this really beautiful lace repeat down the side. It's only a 4-row repeat, with every other row being plain knitting, and then the other 2 rows being the different lace stitches here, which isn't a complicated lace switch. It's just a different placement of your eyelets and the lace to make this a V. I have messed up in a few places in my lace where I forget a yarn over on the round, but nothing that anyone would notice. So I think I've done about maybe 7 inches from the underarm. So I really just have to finish the body, do the bottom ribbing, and then pick up to do the ribbing around the neck and the armholes, and then I'm done. I am using a row counter to kind of keep track of the 4-row repeat. Not kind of to keep track, that is what I am doing. And I am knitting the 48-inch bust in this pattern, which will give me 0 ease at my bust, but gives me the recommended ease from my upper chest. Yeah. The pattern's written lovely. The yarn is really nice. I do find when I am knitting this, because it is cotton and linen, my hands do get tired. I find a little more strain with this yarn than I do with like a wool. And I can recognize it when I go from working on this to working on a wool-based project. I can feel the difference from my hands. So I think that's one of the reasons I wasn't able to complete this in the test knit deadline, between my hands not feeling super comfortable with it. I also initially cast on the wrong size, so I just misread the stitch count, so I had to go back and start over. So that put me a little behind. The yarn's a little rough, and then just work being stressful took away some of my knitting time. So yeah, but overall I think it's going to be a really nice basic. I think it'll be a really pretty top to wear when it's hot, like by itself, or I could wear it underneath something in the colder months, like under a cardigan or under a button-up. I think the lace is simple but beautiful. It's really easy to do. And yeah, I didn't add any bust darts in this. I debated about it, but ended up getting past that point and hadn't done it. So I guess we'll see how it fits. And yeah, still working along on it. And I think trying to finish it before probably the end of August, end of September would be a good goal, so that I should try to finish this in the warmer weather is what I'm trying to get at. So I think that is kind of a goal. I think maybe, I don't know what goal I want to set for myself. Maybe I'll try to work on it 30 minutes every day, or a couple of repeats. I'll try to figure something out for myself to kind of motivate me in working on this. Because it is one of those things, maybe 30 minutes every day would be good, because I can't work on it for extended periods of time because my hands do start to hurt because of the yarn. And it's just because cotton linen just has no real give when you're working on it. Versus wool has a little bit of stretch. It, you know, it works with you a little bit, versus cotton and linen can kind of work against you. But this is the Seagrass Tank. It is out now, so feel free to go look at the pattern. Look at all the beautiful finished objects. I'm just not one of those people yet. I will be, just not at this point in time. But I do think it's beautiful. Okay, so just a few more works in progress to catch you up on before we head into my acquisitions and my flock recap. So I have started another Traveler hoodie by Andrea Mowry, but this time I am doing it for my husband Shane. And so I started this to take with me to flock because I was planning to take that Oslo hat as like my no-think project, but then I wanted something that I knew would keep me busy, but wouldn't take too much focus. It's that fine line, you know? I don't want to have to read a pattern or read a chart or worry about that, but something that'll definitely keep me busy and have a lot of knitting. So I started the Traveler hoodie for Shane because there were a few reasons. One, I'm using the same yarn that I used in mine, which is Knit Picks Wool of the Andes Sport Weight. But his is in the colorway Solstice Heather. So I didn't need to do a swatch, which made it really easy. And so then I just had to decide what size to make him. So with that, I had measured a previous sweatshirt of his, taken all the measurements, figured out how long to make it. And based off of the measurements, it looked like I just needed to make the same size for him that I made for myself, which was the 48-inch finish size. 48-inch isn't a specific size in the pattern, but with my gauge being slightly off, that's the size it ends up being. So because mine was roughly the same circumference, what I had him do, well, it should be the same circumference, I'm knitting the same size, I had him try on my Traveler. Now, my Traveler is made to fit me. I have short arms. Also, mine is slightly cropped. And slightly cropped on me is definitely cropped on him. So when he tried it on, circumference-wise, it fit, but it was so short in both the sleeves and the body. It was very funny to look at. It would have been like a belly shirt, but assured me that the 48-inch was good. He liked that fit. So I have all my measurements on my project page. I talk about, you know, the math that you have to do to get it to fit correctly, the growth rate. So for Shane's, to get from the hem to the underarm, I think I'm doing 14.5 inches, which is many more inches than what's in the pattern. But when I had him order, we based off the number of skeins that I used in my pattern plus an additional sum for him because he's taller than me. So all that to say is I was able to cast this on pretty quickly to take to flock. And this is basically what I worked on over the weekend. I worked on it on the plane when we drove down to the national park, which we didn't actually get to go into because Mount Rainier has timed entry, which we did not know about. But we found a hike, we did that. Anyway, did all that, drove down, kept me very busy, and this is where it's currently at. So it's this purpley blue. Ours are actually very similar in color. Mine is like a dark navy and his is a like dark purpley blue. I'm using my measuring tape stitch marker from Twice Sheared Sheep. I'm at about 5 inches and I need to knit to 12.5 pre-stretching, so pre-blocking. So I still have a good amount of knitting to do, but this pattern is so nice because it's knit for a couple rounds and then purl for a few rounds. You don't really need to look at a pattern once you get it going, and it's really lovely to work on. I have it on a very small circular needle, but I know this is something he will wear. He wears his Montrealer hoodie all the time, and this was just something very easy that I could take to flock and while traveling and just work on. I have started doing the purl rounds with the Portuguese purl, so I put a pin on my shirt and then tension, so that way I can just flip the yarn up and over to do my purls, and that has made those purl rounds a lot more comfortable, and I think it's something I'm probably going to start doing if I have a sequence of like 50 or more purls in a row. You know, if I'm knitting something flat, I'll probably use that. I won't use it for like ribbing because it takes a little bit to like get it set up, and I can purl easily back and forth with like switching from knit to purl if it's like a seed stitch or a rib. But for those long stretches of ribbing, I do find it more comfortable to kind of do it the Portuguese way. Because I don't like a Norwegian purl. I just can't get it to work with the good tension. For me, those just get so loose. But yeah, this is Shane's Traveler hoodie. I'm a couple ridges in. I also made his bottom ribbing a little bit deeper than what the pattern called for to just kind of make it a little more symmetrical. So I think the pattern only calls for like maybe a little under 2 or 2 inches of ribbing, and I did 2.5 just to make it a little more, proportional, since his body length is going to be a lot longer. But yeah, that's this. I'm happy to have another one of these on my needles. I don't know, something about the knit purl pattern of this is really comforting. So I'm excited to have that. And it's something I've been promising him that I would make. So it's good to feel like I'm making a little bit of progress with that. So then I have one more work in progress, and this is my jelly roll blanket. So I started this after I finished my last scrappy blanket, and this has just been it's just downstairs by the TV for when I want to knit on something but don't necessarily want to think. And it's just plain stockinette knitting. So I have finished 2 strips and I've started my 3rd. So I will kind of show you. It's kind of hard to show you. So the main thing that I'm trying to do with this is to not have 2 colors side by side that are the same. So not 2 purples. And making sure that like I don't want these lines to line up. But that's basically it. Most of these minis are leftovers from my Nora Jora's Harry Potter Club from a while ago. I have some row 1 mini skeins that I've thrown in here. And then like this one is a mini that I swapped with a friend, where we did like a Halloween advent with each other, and we sent each other 10, 20, or like 20 gram minis, 10 or 20 gram minis, I don't exactly remember. So that's how long this is. It's a little taller than me when I stand up and like hold it from the ground up. Also, this is all superwash yarn, so it'll grow a little bit. But basically, this is just, it's on a 16-inch circular. It's a US 3. I'm using fingering weight held double. 16 stitches per each of my strips. I slip my first stitch of every row purl-wise with yarn in the back. And then I do the join from the actual jelly roll pattern by K. Jones. I have everything kind of sitting in this market basket with my current yarn sitting in there, and then in this Le Garçon bag is all the minis that I have pulled from my closet that I'm planning to put in. But I have to put these in a bag within the basket because Ebony never plays with yarn except for when they are tiny, like balls. Then she likes to play with them. So minis are her favorite, so I have to protect them. Otherwise they'll end up all over my house. She doesn't eat it, she just likes to bat it around. But she doesn't care about cakes. But something about them being small, she does. But that's just been really nice to work on. It feels really gratifying to like finish a color. So I really enjoy that. It's fun to see it grow. And I see what everyone says about that. I do like it that it's DK though. I like that it goes a little bit quicker. I think the fingering weight version would be probably just a little too slow for me. Those are all my works in progress. And so with that, I'll kind of transition into talking about the Flock Fiber Festival and what I purchased. So if you're not interested in acquisitions or hearing about the festival, feel free to click away. Thank you so much for watching. I hope to see you again. But if that does interest you, feel free to stick around. Take a second and get a drink. All right. So the Flock Fiber Festival was a festival put on in Seattle. It was a Saturday and Sunday in August. So Shane and I flew out Thursday night. We had Friday in Seattle, which was the day we ended up driving down to Mount Rainier National Park before we realized we could not get in. So then we found a hike nearby and went and saw some waterfalls. They were very pretty. Kind of just spent the day out in nature, out in the Northwest, which was really, really nice. It would have been nice to see the national park, but we know for next time. They haven't done time entry before this summer, so it was their first summer doing it, and I just didn't know about it until we literally got there. But alas, it was still a good day. We found some hiking to do. It was still really beautiful. So then Saturday and Sunday we spent at Flock. There were 101 vendors. The actual marketplace was really lovely, and I apologize, I don't have like any videos or photos of the marketplace. But it was in a convention center. The room was huge that it was in. There was tons of natural light. The booths for the vendors were spacious. What was really nice is even if there was overflow from individual booths, there was still enough walking area to like multiple people could walk down the aisle even if booths were overflowing. On both days they did mass shopping from 10 to 12. On Saturday we didn't get there until 12. And then on Sunday we went at 10. So we did the mass shopping for 2 hours. It was a little after 10. And then on Saturday we just were there for the whole unmasked time. They had the marketplace where you could shop. They also had classes. I didn't take any classes. But then also in the marketplace they had like the entire second half of the room was seating areas. They had like 2 vendors in there that were serving food. They had ton of sitting for eating or relaxing and knitting, and then they had a stage where they were also doing talks pretty much every hour about different topics. So there were a couple talks that we sat and listened to, but mostly Saturday we just walked around the vendors and I kind of just did some research. I didn't plan to buy anything on Saturday, and basically the system we developed was if there was something that I liked, I would hand it to Shane, and Shane would take a photo of it, kind of notate what booth it was in, what the yarn was, etc. So then that way at the end of the day, I had kind of a list of all the things that I liked, and where they were from, and could kind of go and figure out what I would want to make in those. And so that was what I did Saturday night. Was I spent the evening kind of looking through the information, figuring out like what I would want a sweater's quantity of, or if anything were smaller. Kind of like I developed a shopping list for Sunday because I'm really trying to, I am stashing down still. I have used more this year than what I've brought in. I haven't bought a ton of yarn this year. I knew going to Flock I was going to buy yarn, so I had saved money up for it. So I had both a budget and like I wanted to go in buying yarn for projects and not just because it was pretty. And I want to say I successfully did that to most of it. I am very happy with all the purchases that I made. And I felt like almost all of it was planned. There were a few skeins that were like a good deal, so I couldn't pass them up. But overall, I feel very competent and happy with what I purchased because I really haven't done much yarn purchasing this year. It feels like an influx because I have bought a lot of it right now. So with that, I'll kind of just go through the basket that I have. So these are actually not something I purchased, but as I was kind of like scrolling through looking at patterns, I found this like cat Russian doll pattern that was knit, and I showed it to Shane when we were literally riding on the bus to get to Flock on Saturday, and he was like, I want that. And he was like, I'm actually not kidding, I do want that. And I was like, well, if you do want, like, you just gotta find 5 mini skeins. So that was kind of his goal on Saturday, is he was taking notes for me and looking for yarn for his little cat Russian dolls. And so he picked up 5 mini skeins from Gray Drizzle Fibers. They're all DK, and this is kind of his palette. So I think he was saying he wants this one to be the outside and then kind of work in. I have to verify. The pattern is written for worsted weight, but I just figured DK would be fine. I'll just adjust my needle size to make it work. I will say the pattern was a little obscure. It doesn't exactly tell you how many grams you need per cat. So I'm hoping 20 grams per each is going to be okay. If not, I think I might be able to order a few more of these mini skeins. But that was kind of the first purchase. He looked at a lot of different booths, a lot of different colors. But then Gray Drizzle Dye Works booth was very jewel toned. It was very pretty. Very, you know, colors that I really enjoy. And I think Shane really liked it as well, obviously, because he bought these. And that was one thing I think Flock did really well with, is there were booths that were very jewel toned. There were some that had mostly tonal. It was like every type of yarn was there. There were pastels. There were booths with pastels. There were some with neons. There were brights. There were the moodier booths. There was, you know, they had the moody boosts, the earth tones, the jewel tones, the more natural colors. I feel like they really got the spectrum of different types of yarn colors to really kind of hit anyone's kind of personal aesthetic. So this was the first purchase. Honestly, I'll probably start these pretty soon just because they look pretty cute. I think it'll be a quick project. I'm wondering if I'll have to do them on DPNs. So we'll see. But that was a purchase for Shane. The other thing we bought on Saturday was I went to Thought to Threads booth, which is a dyer, and I believe they're from Washington. But they had these skeins that were these star skeins. And so these skeins are either, they're one of a kind, no waste skeins. So, you know, if a skein doesn't turn out the way it's supposed to, or using leftover dyes, that's what ends up being made. These were such a steal. They're $15 each, which was such a good deal. So I bought 2 of these just because I was like, I know I'll be able to make a hat or something out of these. It's a really beautiful neutral, and it was such a good deal. So this is on the Ritual DK base. It's 100% organic, non-superwash merino. 246 yards, 100 grams, DK weight. And so I got 2 of these skeins because it was $30 for both of these. So that was like the impulse purchase from Saturday of like, I really want these. I love that it's non-superwash. It feels so nice. And I love the slight like variation here, those little orange blips. So not 100% sure what I'll make with these. I assume it'll probably be like a hat or gloves or both. Not 100% sure. So then we'll move on to Sunday, but we'll stick with Thought to Thread. So Saturday night, I made all my plans. Had my plan for Sunday. So Thought to Thread, this skein is actually one for Shane. It's another of the Ritual DK. This is the colorway Novel Pages. This is a skein that Shane picked out. It's also the non-superwash. He wants an Oslo hat because that's what was on display. And this is why I'm asking, is 100 grams going to be enough for my Oslo hat? Because if not, I'll probably have to order another one of these, but it's beautiful. And then in Thought to Thread's booth, I found more. And honestly, I shouldn't say I found more of this. I was in that booth. I saw Kevin from Needles at the Ready shopping in there, and he found some of the no waste skeins, and it is this collaboration that Thought to Thread does with the Brooklyn Tweed loft base. So these are 100 grams, 550 yards. It is fingering weight, 100% Targhee Columbia wool. And because these were the no waste, one of a kind skeins, they're $15. And so 3 of them is a sweater's quantity. So this is a fingering weight sweater's quantity. This is the Snowy Owl colorway, but kind of a misfit. I'm so excited about this. Check out Needles at the Ready to see what they ended up getting, but may have been slightly enabled. I mean, it was $45 for a sweater quantity. Can we really pass this up? I figure I'll just make like a raglan. You know, maybe this will be so basic for Shane. Maybe it'll just be a cozy classic light for me. I don't know. It's gonna be a woolen spun fingering weight sweater. I'm excited. So I got that. And then for the actual planned purchases. So I saw Red Stag Fiber on Knitting Natty's channel earlier this year talking about this Red Stag collection. This is the Yorkshire DK base. It's a non-superwash, 246 yards. It's 75% Polworth, 25% Masham. It is so squishy. It is so lovely. It is this like rich brown undertone yarn. I'm so excited to make this. I looked at a couple different patterns for what this could be. So essentially it's gonna be a DK weight pattern. I'm not 100% sure on which. It might be the Hallou by Caitlin Hunter. It might be like the Eva cardigan by Petite Knit. It might be the Brooklyn Raglan. There's a couple of different patterns that it might be, but I got enough yarn to kind of do whatever I want with it. And I love this brown. I think it's so beautiful. So I got a sweater's quantity of this from Red Stag Fiber. There were so many good colors on these bases from Red Stag. It was so good. And they have this base on both a DK and a sport. It was so tempting. This was definitely a bit of a splurge, but it's so gorgeous. And this was something I kind of knew going into the festival that I wanted to check out. So I'm very happy with this. This was also something, so this is from San Juan Woolworks. It's this beautiful marl. It is a DK weight, 100% island grown wool, 3-ply, 230 yards, 100 grams. I wanted to get a sweater's worth of this, but I had to save a little bit of money. So what I decided on is I'll probably do a hat mitt combo for these yarns because I loved the marl so much. This was like right on the end of one of the aisles, and every time we walked by it, I kept looking at it and I was like, this is something I have to get. It was something I kept thinking about at night, that Saturday night, and I was like, I have to get this yarn. So there were tons of beautiful yarns here. San Juan Woolworks. It's a Finn and BFL cross. The base is called Spy Hop. And then the last yarn I got is a sweater's quantity from Fiber Hustle. It's this beautiful mint, also a non-superwash. It's 100% Targhee, 280 yards, 115 grams. This is beautiful mint. I'm going to make the new Jessie Made sweatshirt that came out for the Spinster's Daughter worsted. I'm just really excited. I love that this mint, I have another mint sweater that I wear, and every time I wear it, I get lots of compliments on the color. So I thought this as like a cropped kind of sweatshirt would be really cute. Also had to support the Hustlers. Their booth was a lot of fun as well. And in their booth, I got to meet Kevin and Ray, Michael from Piece for Piece, and then of course Chip and Aaron from Fiber Hustle. And so that was a lot of fun. And so just Flock all in all was just a lot of fun. I liked that it was more of a chill festival. It was really well laid out. There was no overhead music. It was really nice. Tons of places to sit and relax, to kind of like decompress from all the wonderful yarn. But there was so much, it was a little overwhelming, so you almost had to take a break. And the location was just beautiful. But anyway, I must leave now to head to PT. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. If you're at Flock, let me know what you thought, or just let me know in the comments anything that you want to let me know. I love reading the comments, and I promise I'm going to do better about responding. I do read all of them. I just don't always respond to all of them. You know, sometimes you got to pick where your mental balance goes. So if you do ask a question, I always try to respond to those. But otherwise, please know I do read all of them, and it does make my day when you do comment. So please like and subscribe so that way you know when I post my future videos, and liking helps us find new knitters. Anyway, thank you for hanging out with me. I hope you've put a little bit of love into every stitch of your making today, and I will see you again in a few weeks. I hope. I'm going to try really hard to come back in a few weeks, guys. So thank you so much. Have a great day.